Hey, welcome to another edition of the Flooring 101 podcast. It is Sunday, April the 19th, 2026. I don't know when you're going to be listening to this podcast, but hopefully you are in the mood to learn a little bit about flooring. So I'm Jason Jabbar, and I spent the last 25 years in the retail flooring business, the last 10 as CEO of Jabbar's Carpet Outlet located in Wichita, Kansas. We're a single store operation, but we're one of the largest independent retailers in the United States. So if you are in the retail flooring business and you're experiencing issues or you're thinking about getting into the retail flooring business, then this podcast is for you and it is absolutely free. So you can find it on all of your favorite podcast channels. So today, we will continue through our journey of Flooring 101 and building a better business, the retail flooring blueprint. The last episode, we talked about choosing the right retail model. So if you didn't catch that episode, please make sure that you go back, whether you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting channel, and check out how to learn about choosing the right retail model. But today we will specifically be discussing startup costs and capital planning. We're talking a little bit about money today. So if you stick with us, you'll learn how to start, run, and scale a profitable flooring business through some proven systems for sales, operations, and marketing. These are the exact systems that I use in my business and how we have grown over the last 50 years to be one of the largest independently owned flooring retail businesses in the United States, working with all of the major manufacturers and distributors across the United States. And we'll tell you how to work on sales and operations and marketing. And if you're having issues in your business, make sure you check out this podcast and we will get you on the right track. So let's get into it today, talking about startup costs and capital planning. And we're really going to be talking about 5 main points that we will discuss today. So that is the realistic startup cost breakdown, inventory strategy at launch, working capital requirements, financing options, and then undercapitalization, which is the number one killer of retail flooring businesses. So you want to make sure that you listen to this podcast all the way through. This episode should give you a good idea about what you need to think about in regards to capital planning, cash, and you should complete a business plan with all the possible starting expenses before moving forward with your idea to open up a retail flooring store. At the end of the podcast, please let us know what you liked and what questions you might have. Remember, you can follow us on all of your favorite podcast locations, as well as you can follow us on Substack, Reddit, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram under the Flooring 101 banner. So if you want to get really one-on-one and really dive into building a better business for yourself in addition to this podcast, or you've gone through our other channels and just need a little bit more guidance and a little bit more one-on-one help, you can certainly go to jasonjabbar.com. You can book a free call with me. We'll sit down and discuss your business a little bit and see how we can mutually help each other to get your business back on track and build a better retail flooring business for you. So let's get into it a little bit. When we're talking about startup costs and capital planning, when you're starting a retail flooring business, it's going to require a little bit more than ambition. It requires realistic, concrete capital planning. We're talking about it's going to require money. And one of the most common reasons new stores fail is it's not a lack of demand, it's usually a lack of cash, because a proper startup cost breakdown should include your lease deposits, build out, displays, your technology and software systems, and really a dedicated marketing launch budget. Your lease and deposit costs they're going to vary widely depending on where you're at in the United States. If you're building a business in Florida versus building a business in Nebraska, those lease and deposit costs are going to, be across the board. But they're often one of the largest upfront expenses, and you need to be planning, at least a full year out ahead of time and making sure that you have that money on hand. So, your build out and your displays, they need to be functional. They need to be sales driven. They're not overly expensive unless you're going to be getting into a particular buying group. And we talked about that a couple podcasts ago about the different buying groups or franchises that are out there. If that's the choice that you have decided to go in the route for your retail business, They should be able to give you exactly what those costs are going to be based on the displays and the materials that they're going to want you to have in your store. But if you're going the independent route, there's a number of different retailers that you can work with, where if you're going to take on their products, they're going to give you some terms. They'll allow you to, pay it out over several months, but you need to work that into your budget. Now, technology-wise, there's all kinds of stuff out there. You've got to look at your CR systems, your estimating software, your scheduling tools. These today, in today's retail business, are going to be essential for you to be running a modern retail store in a modern operation. And there is a ton of stuff out there. There's Q-Floors, RFMS, CompuFloor, Broadloom, tons of stuff out there. Before you even open your doors, when you're in the initial planning stages, make sure that you're taking those meetings. Make sure that you are having them give you the overview. Have the meeting, have them walk you through your system, figure out how many hours of training are involved, figure out if the training is going to be on site. You're going to need to figure out how many computers you're going to need, what type of software and hardware that you're going to need. Are you going to be cloud-based? All of those things have to be figured out before you're ready to open your doors. And that cost alone can be significant. But if you don't plan for it, if you're like, hey, I can just get by with paper and pencil, and we can write out receipts and we can write out invoices, do that. That's not the way it works anymore. In order to get your invoices for manufacturers, you're going to have to be online with hardware and software systems. In order to pay your bills, in order to get your pricing, if you want to have a successful retail business, that stuff needs to be planned out for, budgeted out for before you even open their doors. And lastly, without a strong marketing launch, even the best showroom is going to sit there empty. Even if you have the best location, you're going to be empty because nobody knows about you. So whether you have chosen to run TV or billboards, or if you're going to go with your website, SEO, PPC, whether you're going to go social media organic on Facebook and LinkedIn, you need to figure out what those costs are going to be. And there's a variety of choices out there, but you need to get down on paper, figure out what it is with your budget. Now, your inventory strategy at launch is going to play a major role in protecting your capital. And a lot of new owners make the mistake of overbuying inventory and trying, you're going to tie up cash in products that you may not sell quickly. Now, our business is a little bit different. We've got a huge inventory, but that's how we started our business, 50 years ago. In the business today, if you're opening them up, you're just launching a brand new retail store, you found a location, you found an area in need, you are aware that there are aged houses in the area, you think you have a good customer base. If you're opening up a new retail store, I probably wouldn't make a big investment in inventory right off the bat. I would probably wait until you're able to get some returning customers, repeat customers, whether that's apartments or landlords or property management, some things that you can turn quickly. But I wouldn't be tying up cash at the very beginning by overbuying inventory. And when we're talking about inventory, there's a lot of people, especially if you're coming from the general contracting side and you're opening up a retail business, they're like, hey, I can buy this pallet of wood and I'm going to save a couple bucks a square foot and I can turn it really quick. That's not something you want to be wasting and tying up your cash in. When you're talking about inventory, you're going to want to have a couple $100,000 worth of inventory on hand across several product categories. You're going to want to have 10 different options of carpet and 5 or 6 LVPs or SPCs and a handful of laminates and a handful of woods, depending on the area that you're in. You may not be in an area that does a lot of wood or does a lot of tile, or maybe it's all hard surface and you don't do a lot of carpet, but you don't want to be tying up that cash in inventory right off the bat. Wait till you are established and then figure out where you can find an inroad once you have some cash stacked up. So a display-focused approach is going to allow you to showcase a curated selection of products while ordering the materials as the jobs are sold. This is a traditional setup. It generally works best until you've established yourself It's going to reduce risk and keep your cash available for the rest of your operations, paying your employees, paying your utilities, paying your rent and lease. And when you get your feet under you and stocking inventory is going to be necessary, it should be limited to fast-moving products with a proven demand, something that you know will sell. If you can't turn a product, if you're just buying a pallet of something, so in laminate or vinyl plank, you're talking about 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. You need to be turning that pretty quickly. If you're getting into truckloads, 40 to 50,000 square feet, depending on the product, maybe you've bought 4 colors and 10 or 15,000 square feet of each of them. You need to be turning half of that within 6 months and all of it in a year. And realistically, you need to be turning half of it in 3 months and all of it in 6 months. And if you can't do that, then there's no point in stocking inventory at that point. You need to be open to just your ordering structure, which should be intentional, and it should be designed to support sales and not creating unnecessary financial pressure. Don't start stocking until you are ready to stock and you have an idea of the products that you know will move quickly and are in demand in your area. And if you're going to stock, honestly, you should just be buying truckloads. If you're not at the place where you can buy a truckload of material, you're probably not at the place where you need to be stocking inventory. Now, that may not be right, but that would be a rule of thumb that I would use and has been successful for our business. And we buy a lot of stock and a lot of truckloads. But if you can't, and we're going to miss, we're going to buy 4 colors and we're going to miss on one, and we're going to have to blow that out, which is fine. But you need to make sure that you're buying things that you know that you can sell. And if you don't know, if you're like, hey, how do I know it's going to sell until I buy it? Then you're not ready to buy it yet. So working capital is where, if you put that money aside, the working capital, the money that you have on hand, is where a lot of businesses either survive or fail in the early stages. Opening your own business, it's not for the faint of heart, and planning is absolutely essential. So, beyond your startup costs, you need enough cash to operate through the first several months. This would include payroll, a buffer, careful planning around vendor payment and timing. And we talked about that in an earlier podcast, working with your vendors to figure out what kind of payment terms you can get, whether it's net 30, 60, 90, maybe some of them have 6 months, especially if you're opening up a new business and you're bringing on displays. Someone will put you under a new showroom tab where you'll have all year to pay for those displays, and I would certainly take advantage of that, and they can spread it out. But without adequate working capital, if you just think, hey, I found a perfect place, I signed a lease, I should be able to make the note every month, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you've got to fill in between there. And that's what we're talking about today. Because, these gaps, if you're missing things, that's what creates stress. And that's what limits your ability to operate effectively. So I would plan on having at least 3 to 6 months of operating expenses in reserve at any one time. 3 to 6 months that you can cover payroll, 3 to 6 months that you can cover your lease and your other utilities and any of your other expenditures. And that gives you time to ramp up, because there's multiple financing options. You could look at SBA loans, private capital, supplier financing programs. If you are a part of a buying group or a franchise, they may be able to spread out that or help you with that capital money as you're starting your business. And if you're choosing either a buying group or a franchise, consult with those entities. Consult with those people on their ability to help finance your decision on opening up a business. And each of them is going to come down to its own advantages and its own trade-offs. And the right choice really depends on your specific situation and your risk tolerance about how far you can really push it. So regardless of how you fund your business, undercapitalization is the number one threat. Most businesses close because they don't have enough cash to stay afloat before they really take off. And your doors are shut before they've even really had a chance to be open. And you've got to have that roadmap. You've got to build it out, build out the scenario, look at our 90-day launch that we'll be talking about here, because these cash crunch scenarios, especially during those first 90 days, are common when the sales are taking time to build a lead. You may think that you're opening up a business and you've got a good bank of customers. Those purchases made by those customers that you've already banked, they go by really quickly. It takes time to build. So planning for a slower ramp up rather than just assuming immediate success is going to be critical. And a well-capitalized business where you've got the money, you have it in reserves, you've already blueprinted where you're going to go in the first 90 days, that gives you the flexibility to grow, and it gives you the flexibility to adapt, and it gives you the flexibility to execute your strategy without being forced into making some very reactive decisions. So, if you haven't done it yet, I would make sure that you make a business plan. You can go on to, Ask Gemini or ChatGPT and just say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a flooring business. Create a business plan for the first 90 days, or create a business plan prior to opening up my store. And it's gonna list it out there. Follow that business plan. If you don't have a business plan, give me a shout. You can find me on any of our different Flooring 101 channels, whether it's Substack or Reddit or Facebook or LinkedIn. We have a great community on the school platform on Flooring 101 where you can join that community. And we're constantly talking about, with other business owners about how to make our retail businesses better. The best form of flattery is borrowing somebody else's idea and making it their own. So I would certainly look into all that stuff. So, like I said, today we have talked about startup costs and capital planning, the realistic startup cost breakdown, which is lease and deposits, build out and displays, technology and software, and then having a marketing launch budget. We've talked a little bit about inventory strategy at launch, display only versus stocked inventory, avoiding overbuying, opening up, a certain order structure. We talked about working capital, a payroll one way, having a cash buffer, vendor payment timing, and making sure you've talked with those vendors about when you're going to pay it, and then some different financing options. You can get an SBA loan, private capital money, or some of the supplier financing, or some of the franchise or buying groups have different financing options as well. So I would certainly look into that. And like I said, the number one killer of your business before you even get it off the ground is not having enough money. You blew it on inventory. You opened the business with too many people. There's a variety of these cash crunch scenarios that if you don't have enough money, you're going to have to shut your doors before you can get up to your first 90 days. So I would take that slow approach. Make sure that you have everything done right. Ramp up to growing bigger. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to build a business. We've been in business for over 50 years. We at one time were just opening our doors and learning how to do it. And these are proven ways and proven strategies for opening up your business. So, if you can get through those first 90 days, you're going to be in a much better start than you were beginning. Hopefully this episode gave you a good idea about some of the things that you need to think about in regards to capital planning, which is really, you need to think about cash. And you should be completing a business plan if you haven't done it. And you need to think about every single expense that you're going to have before you open those doors. And you need to have that planned out before you move forward. Because I want you to be successful, and you want to be successful. You're going to have your family that's dependent upon you. You're going to have employees that are dependent upon you. And so you need to have your ducks in a row before you open those doors and start conquering the world as a retail flooring leader. So if you like what you heard today, let us know what you liked and what questions you might have. And remember, you can follow us on all of our favorite podcast locations, as well as, Substack. We put out, a new chapter across our series, a couple times a week. We're launching that same stuff on Reddit. We're posting it on our Facebook page and our LinkedIn pages. A lot of the same information, so you can cross-reference of it, and you can get on there and you can like it and you can share it, but you can also ask questions about it and get some one-on-one time. And if you want to get more one-on-one time and really dive into bettering your business with me specifically, you can go to jasonjabbar.com. You can book a call with me. It is completely free, but I'd be more than happy to jump on a call with you and discuss your businesses a little bit and see if there's something we can do to help you out a little bit better. So I appreciate everybody joining Flooring 101 today. For our fourth podcast. If you liked what you heard, make sure you comment about it. Make sure you share it with your friends. We'll be on next week as well. And next time we're going to be discussing a location strategy that drives traffic. So not only are you prepared to open your doors, but you're making sure that you are opening your doors in the right place. So Flooring 101 listeners, we'll talk to you next time. And until then, build a better business.